In this short reflection, let's consider how we might gauge our authenticity in mission. Jesus did not mandate that we go forward and make Catholics or Protestants or any other religious group. He said, go forth and make disciples, witnesses to a life lived in accord with the priorities of the gospel. Mission is not about getting people to believe the right things in order to get to some special place. It's about inspiring people to embrace a model of life based on the way Jesus lived and his vision for the reign of God. Mission is about transformation so that we see with the eyes of God and live lives inspired by that vision. We can waste so much time arguing about which religion is right, which holds the most truth. In reality, the enemies of religions are not other religions. The enemies of true religion are poverty, injustice, and marginalisation. All that subverts the potential for the fullness of life for human beings. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer argued that the struggle for justice should transcend the imperatives of any religious belief, while awaiting execution in a concentration camp. He wrote that we should act for justice as if God were not there. We should change the world because it needs changing, not just in response to a divine command. In a speech to new cardinals in 2016, Pope Francis warned that the gospel of marginalisation, the gospel of the marginalised, is where our credibility is at stake, is discovered, and is revealed. To be authentic, our voice in mission must amplify the voice of the poor and the disenfranchised, those who have little control over their lives, and those who need to be heard. In the tradition of Jesus, our authenticity is defined by the love and compassion we show to the forgotten ones, those who are left behind in the world, and by whom we need to include. We worship a God who sides with the poor and those at the margins of life. We worship this God by serving and doing all that we can for the poor. Service is worship. In the words of the prophet Isaiah, the worship of the people is meaningless without justice. It doesn't matter how eloquent and how wonderful our prayers and liturgies might be. Without a commitment to serve and stand with the poor, our worship will always be empty. Sister Joan Chittister put it so well. To say that we believe that God loves the poor, judges on their behalf, wills their deliverance, but do nothing ourselves to free the poor, to hear their pleas, to lift their burdens, to act on their behalf, is an empty faith indeed. We are both guided and chastised by the ideals of our gospel. We fail the gospel when we accept a tame and domesticated mission, divorced from a commitment to the plight of the marginalised. Undertaken in the tradition of Jesus, mission invokes what martyred El Salvadoran priest Rutilio Grande called an impossible neutrality. It takes sides, becomes political, and asks disturbing questions about the way things are and why this is so. Father Rutilio warned his people not to be content with a God in the clouds, a muzzled, mute and tame Christ. He proposed that if Jesus were to appear in our world today with his subversive message of inclusion and justice, many of us might call for his arrest and silencing also. Why? Because mission is about the God of the poor, while most of us are not poor. It's about the view from the poor, while we may know little of what this might look like. It's about challenging social structures that can produce inequality, while some of those same structures may be beneficial for us and our security. We're told in chapter 25 of Matthew's Gospel that the only question we'll have to answer at the end of time is how we've treated the poor. We will be judged by God on one basis. Did we care for the poor? Did we give bread to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, and clothe the naked? There are no orthodoxy tests referred to here, no creedal formulas to recite, no catechetical requirements to measure up to, even questions about our private morality. Only the question of how we've treated the poor. The parable of the Good Samaritan tells us clearly that love and compassion trump laws and religious codes. The parable is not so much a teaching against hypocrisy, but rather it highlights the consequences of excessive rule following when what is most needed is compassion. The Sabbath was made for humanity, not humanity for the Sabbath. In the words of Dom Pedro Casadeliga from Brazil, we must keep repeating it. Without the poor, there is no salvation. Without the poor, there is no church. Without the poor, there is no gospel. Thank you, friends, and may the God of justice guide your every effort to live the gospel with courage and authenticity.